15-minute studio today is an award-winning author and professor of history at Michigan State University, Professor Nwando Achebe. Professor Achebe was born in Enugu State, Nigeria, to one of Nigeria's most renowned and celebrated literary icons, the late Dr. Chinua Achebe. She studied at the University of Massachusetts, where she graduated in 1991 with a degree in theater arts. In the year 1994, she obtained a master's degree in African Area Studies from the University of California, Los Angeles. Still in the same field of study and from the same university, she bagged her doctorate degree in the year 2000. She has served in different institutions. She served as a Ford Foundation and Fulbright Hayes Scholar in Residence at the Institute of African Studies and History Department of University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She was a 2000 Woodrow Wilson Women's Studies Fellow. Professor Achebe has won several awards, amongst which is Distinguished Lecturer in 2014 at the World Archaeology, Sichuan University, China. In 2013, she won the Idol Cinder Book Award, to mention but just a few. She is married to her Yoruba heartthrob, and the union is blessed with children. Please welcome to the 15-minute studio an award-winning author and historian, a pace-setter, game changer, and a woman of excellence, Professor Nwando Achebe.
Oh yes, you got that right. Chinua Achebe's daughter sitting right here with me, Nwando Achebe. Now, I've been wondering, what life would be for a daughter of Achebe. In fact, children of Achebe, would it all be books, reading? Was it fun?
It was a wonderful life. I'm not going to lie about that. But, when I was young, I'm the youngest of four. And when I was young, I thought that everybody's father was famous. When I was really young, I just assumed, you view the world through the prism of your own reality. And for me, from time to time, you see your father on TV. I knew he was on book covers. And so I thought, oh, maybe everybody's father is like that. But no, life in the Achebe family was wonderful. With both my parents, especially my father, as busy as he was, family came first. It was always first. I remember, for instance, when I was young, I think I was about, how old was I? 17 when I had acute appendicitis. And my father was supposed to be in Germany. He canceled his trip to be with me. So it's always, for him, it's always been about family. Okay. And so, I know that, I realize, not that I don't know that my father is a writer and that he's famous, but he's always been just dad. When I need him, he was there. He used to say to me, he was my best friend. He used to say to me that if there's something that you cannot tell me, then no, you're not doing the right thing.
Definitely.
So there was that avenue of communication. And that's what I miss so much, with the passing of my father.
It's okay.
When he passed, some of my, friends and colleagues, and trying to console me, and I know where they were coming from, would say, you know what, your father will never die. That's what they said to me. And
he sure hasn't.
It was still very, it was still very new. So, after a few people had said that to me, I said, you know what, stop telling me that. I said, I understand where you're coming from. But you know what? That father I talk to every day. He's not here, so don't tell me that. He's my father first and foremost. Okay. And I can't pick up the phone and hear his voice. I know now that nobody in this world, I will never hear the word dom-dom. That's what my father called me. Nobody else has that pet name for me, and I don't allow anybody to call me that.
I know how he feels. So, I know how he feels. Anyway, you're doing well. You're presenting him real good, especially bagging or getting to the professorial seat at the age of 39. That's a big one for me. But I won't ask you how you did that, but I'm going to ask you, how did you get into history?
How did I get into history? I got into history in a roundabout manner. I was a theater major. Got my BA in theater arts, theater music and dance. Performance has always been in my life. When I was little at the University of Nigeria Primary School, I was opportune to be part of a folk opera, which was directed by the famous Dr. Mekinzewi, and we toured the country. So this idea of performance has always been in my blood. But when I graduated, I wanted to continue with my education, and I wanted to do a master's. In the US, they're professional degrees. I knew that I wanted to perhaps be an actress and director at the same time, but unfortunately they didn't have such programs. You can either do an MFA in acting or an MFA in directing or an MFA in costume design or scenic design. And frankly speaking, I just decided, you know what? I am a black woman in the US. I don't want to wait tables. I don't want to be poor. So I said, let me do something at the graduate level that doesn't take me totally away from what I enjoy, but is within that. So I got admission to the University of California in Los Angeles, initially to study documentary filmmaking. And when I got there, the only Africanist documentary filmmaker was on sabbatical for a whole year. It was a 2-year program. So I knew that in order to do the kind of documentaries that I wanted to do as an African woman, as an Igbo woman, as a Nigerian woman, that I need to learn history. And that's what led me into my first history class at UCLA. It was the class of the late Boniface Obichere. And I tell you, he captivated me that first day of class. I was sitting there awe-stricken with my mouth open. I'm listening to this sage stand in front of the classroom. He is reciting the history of Africa. I could see myself in that history. I'm looking at him, even though he's not talking about me, I'm just in awe. And that was the beginning of my love affair with history, having a phenomenal teacher teach history as a story, as opposed to all these dates and he taught it as a story that empowered me as an African woman to want to know more about my ancestors. Because, you know, so far as you know from whence you come, there's really no end to as far as you can, you can really take it and go once you know who you are. But if you don't, there's not that confidence. You know, my confidence comes from our people, the achievements of the women. You know, I look back and I think about all these Igbo women that have achieved, all these Nigerian women, and it gives me so much pride.
And you have actually done well documenting them, and particularly, taking aback when I think about your books, particularly the female king.
Yes.
How did you get that? I mean, I am also a student of history, but I've not been able to unravel that. How were you able to unravel that?
It was an amazing find for me. When I started working on my dissertation, or sort of thinking about working on my dissertation, I knew I wanted to, because I'm Igbo, I knew I wanted to do Igbo women's history. That much I knew, because women's voices didn't exist in the text that we were reading. In the 1990s at UCLA, the professors are trying to introduce us to African women's history. They're having us read articles called Beast of Burden, the subordination of Swanan women. They have us reading these articles that say that African women are sold to the highest bidder for their reproductive and productive labor. So I wanted to tell a different story. And it was my mentor, Professor Boniface Obichere, that put me on the mission to start. He had me reading all these old school anthropological and ethnographical texts, thousands and thousands of pages. I would meet with him. I'm frustrated. I'm like, Professor, you know there are no women's voices here. Why are you having me do this? He says, continue. And there it was on page 158 of C.K. Meek's Law and Authority in a Nigerian Tribe. One sentence that said, you know, something peculiar is happening in the Enugu-Ezike region, where a woman is known as Eze. Eze is the Igbo word for king. C.K. Meek knew about queens. He didn't call her Ezewani, which is a queen. But for me, even if she was an Ezewani, it still would have been a fascinating thing for me to study, because we know there's a proverb that Igbo enwereze, the Igbos have no kings. And that if you want to be a king, you can go and be a king in your mother's backyard. So the Igbos don't believe in individualized autocratic power. They know about that because Igbo land is surrounded by kinships like the Igala, you know, all of these kingdoms that we know, but the Igbo people decided that's not for them. So really, it's the discovery of this woman who, they said, nameless, he didn't call her name, that was a king that really propelled me to do what to do my study. And it took years, the female king of colonial Nigeria, 15 years of field work. It didn't just happen like this. So it's 15 years of going into the Enugu Ezike community, talking with the elders, both male and female. They're sharing this wonderful story with me, but not stopping there, going to Igala land, because this is a woman who went on exile, was forced into exile for almost 20 years in Igala land. She met up with the Ata, the king of Igala. He made her Eze. He was the one who made her king. I was opportuned to meet up with the present Ata, and it was his father that made her king. So they were able to confirm everything that I had gathered from the Nsukka side with I call them my oral history collaborators. I don't like the term informants because I believe that without the Nsukka people who opened up their lives to me, who shared their stories with me, there's no way I would be able to write what I've written.
Definitely, you've carried on well. But you also seem to describe yourself as the West Africanist.
Yes.
Even though I know you live and work in the U.S., Michigan precisely.
Yes.
Why do you call yourself that?
Well, in our training, so I'm trained, my PhD is in African history. And because Africa is huge, you have all of these countries, over 3,000 different ethnic groups in Africa, we become specialized at the PhD level. So if you want to study African history, you have to choose what area of Africa. So we call ourselves, if you major in West Africa, you're a West Africanist. Okay. If you're what you're doing is East Africa, you're an East Africanist.
All right.
But further, so I was trained as a West Africanist because that's my area of concentration. But you could further break that down and say, within West African history, my major area of specialization is Nigeria. Within Nigeria, my major area of specialization is women, gender, and sexuality history. And you continue to start breaking it down.
All right, okay. Yes. Your area of concentration has been the East.
Yes.
And somehow I know you're married to the West.
Yes.
Ogundumu, right?
Yes. Yes, I am.
All right. Having had this interracial marriage, I'd like to know, have you been able to pick up something about your people, your new people, the Yoruba, the Iwedu, the language?
Unfortunately, I don't speak Yoruba. And I say unfortunately because it's something that I would love, it's a language that I would love to pick up. Don't get me wrong, because as a gender historian, I'm seeing there's so much. For instance, nobody has written on Madame Tinubu. Why can't we write a whole book on her, for instance? And it's not that I can't. It's not that I don't feel that I'm able. But the kind of history that I do, the reason why I focused in on Igbo land is that it's where I come from. It was my first language. And I'm able to gain access to my history collaborators and speak with them without having to use an interpreter.
You know what we're going to do? I'm going to have to teach you the language.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing you do, in the morning you say Ekaro.
Okay, yes.
Okay, you know that?
Yes.
Okay, you and I ask you, Shedadani, what do you answer? Adupe.
Adupe. You know, the thing about it is that colonialism, I like to, we look at each other and we say, well, you can say whatever you want to say about the British coming to Nigeria and all of that, but it's colonialism that brought us together. Because if that didn't happen, we won't, because he doesn't speak Igbo. So we won't have a language in which we can communicate.
It's all right. So Asha is almost not there anymore. But I'd like to know, really, during the last days of your father, how was he like? He's not just your father, he's our father now.
Yes, yes. It was wonderful, wonderful. He was sick before he died, but he had his entire family with him.
All right,
we were all there, and that's the important thing.
Very important. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I'd like to go back. Which of the books is your favorite? Let me ask Ruth, because you like a lot of books. Of Chinua Achebe, which of his books do you like most?
Oh, Elizabeth, Things Fall Apart remains one classic for me. And, of course, Arrow of God. I like that one, too. But, Chinua Achebe's books are books that you cannot pick in particular. Okay, I like this one, I don't like this one, because there's something always special about each book. And, of course, he's beautiful.